Hey everyone, Kevin here with Victory 4x4. In this video, I'll show you how to install our Blitz Sliders on your Lexus LX 570. Now to get started, we're going to need to begin disassembly of the step from the vehicle. For that, I'm going to start up here in the front wheel opening. Now, ours has been modified a little bit already for tire clearance purposes, so it may be slightly different than what you're working on. But you're basically going to disconnect all the fasteners up here holding this plastic to the front of the vehicle. The Torx fasteners in here can be removed with a T30 Torx bit. Then here in the rear wheel opening, you're going to have one T30 fastener to remove. Now working underneath here at the center step mount location, you can remove this connector from the step, and then simply pressing the finger tab up here down, you can pull the two halves of that apart. After that, you can remove the two fasteners holding each step mount to the body using a 12mm socket. Now, before we remove the factory steps from the vehicle, we're going to want to lay out and at least mark our cut. For that, I'm using this laser level. All you're going to be doing here at the rear is trying to continue this line right out along the back edge, and then as well as into the inner fender area. So for that, I've got this laser level set up, not necessarily level with the earth, but parallel to the top edge of this step plastic in here, because these are two separate pieces. And then I'm simply going to use that as a guide to place my tape right out here on the painted surface, and then continue that back into here as well. So once you have that marked out, this should wind up at the same height and running parallel to this seam. So then once I have that marked out and I'm happy with the way it looks, I'm going to be cutting along the bottom edge of this tape. And then I'll also go back in with some additional tape and mask off all of the painted surface above that so that I don't damage it during the cutting process. Then up here at the front of the step, we're going to be doing pretty much the same process, trying to stay as parallel to this seam as possible and carry a line all the way out here to the front of the step. And then as this wraps around into the wheel opening, I just want to make sure I'm below this lowermost mounting bolt hole. Then, just like we mentioned in the rear, I'm going to come back with some extra tape and mask above this off to protect that paint during the cut. Then after you have this marked out, all your fasteners removed, the only thing holding this on is retaining clips across the top edge. So to get those free, you can just kind of grab back in here, and then it may be beneficial to have a panel tool to get behind this edge as well, and then it's just a matter of pulling out all the way along that top edge. With that step out of the way, you'll need to remove this lower cage assembly. For that, you just need a 12mm socket, and then it will be helpful to have a swivel at some of these locations. Now you can grab your step, and you're going to want to pull this light wiring harness so that we can reuse that later on. So just go ahead and unclip it down here on the one end. And then you're going to need to either remove these clips from the step, or what I'm going to do, because the clips themselves are not being reused, is just lightly cut the tape that's holding this harness into the clips. And then we can pull that free. Then with that wiring harness removed from the step, we can come in here and make our cuts. Now for this, I'm just going to be using our 4.5 inch grinder with a cutting disc. This could also be done with a lot of different tools, like an air saw, possibly even a sawzall if you're careful and have the right blade on hand. Then after you have both of those cut, you want to come back in here on the back side and separate this top section from the lower half of the step. Now for that, you're just going to be removing all these clips all the way along the back. That can be done with your panel tool, one at a time, or if you don't have one of these, you can kind of get these with your thumb or even a flat screwdriver. Now this is going to be discarded, so if you want, you can come in here and simply cut these with a razor blade, which allows that to come apart a little bit quicker. Then with the two halves separated, you can simply come back in here and clean up your cut, a little bit of sandpaper or even a grinder, and then this can be snapped back in place on the vehicle, and these fasteners can be reinstalled. Now working here on the driver's side, I'm going to be installing the front mount first. It's going to look just like this. This outside mounting flange kind of angles out and forward because of this angled surface that it mounts to here. Now, the mounting holes on the sides of these are going to reuse factory fasteners into factory threaded holes from that cage assembly we removed earlier. You're going to get these bolted in place, pushed up tight, and then you'll use these bottom holes as a guide in order to drill. So when you put all these in, you'll just need to push the lower flange up tight to the frame and then tighten this bolt to hold it in place for now. Next, working front to rear, I'm going to be installing the center mount. It's going to look just like this. This 90-degree flange will go toward the front of the vehicle, and then it's going to install, basically straddling that electrical wiring harness, again with a factory fastener through the side. Now for the rear slider leg, you're going to need to come in here just ahead of this rear control arm mount and remove this bolt as well. And then you can grab that slider leg. It'll look just like this, and you can reinstall that bolt through this front hole. Now before you get that bolt tight, you'll want to grab your 4-inch long 1/2-inch bolt provided, install a washer on there, and that can go through the back mounting hole as well as all the way through and out the other side of this control arm mount. Then, while those are still loose, grab your mount support bracket. It'll go in here behind this mount just like this. It'll bolt to the frame here using the factory bolt that you removed while we were taking off that cage assembly, and then out here on this slider mount using a 5/16 hex bolt with a serrated flange nut and a washer. Once you have that through, again, push this up tight. You can come in here and tighten this bolt. And then you can install the nut to the back side of that 1/2-inch bolt and tighten that up as well. Then once you have these pushed up tight, this bolt tightened in the side of the frame, you're going to use all these lower holes as a guide. You'll need to drill those out to 7/16 to accept the 1/2-inch self-threading bolts. Now to do that,
we're going to recommend using a center punch and a hammer to mark the center of these holes, and then stepping your way up with several drill bits to get to that size for the best result. Then once you have all those opened up, you can come back in and touch up this paint to prevent any future corrosion. And then using a 3/4 socket, you can install these self-tapping 1/2-inch bolts. Next, you're going to need to get your slider prepped before installation to the vehicle. So for that, the only thing you really need to do is get these lights installed. Now you're going to want to get these out. Be sure to remove the plastic cover before you put that in, because you don't want to have to deal with that after the fact. And then you're going to grab the bolt. Be sure to put the black plastic washer on the bolt itself. Grab a nut and washer. And then these lights are going to install over the pre-existing holes and cutouts on the back side of this slider. And then you can install a washer and nut on the inside. Then, using a 3mm hex and an 8mm wrench, tighten these up evenly so that this light sits flush to the surface. After that, you can just let this wire hang, or even just tuck it up in here temporarily until you get this mounted and are ready to tie that in. Do the same thing for your other 3 lights, and then we'll get these installed. Now you're ready to get your slider installed onto the vehicle. A couple things worth mentioning here. One, just to help with the ease of alignment, it may be worth coming back and loosening these mounts up just a little bit so you don't have to fight your hardware as it goes in. After that, I kind of cheated already, and this might be something you can do to help you out too. I started 1 bolt at the very end down there, which allows me to just pivot off of that, lift this slider up, and get it lined up with the rear bracket. Once you have it up there, use your 1/2-inch hex head hardware. Go ahead and install a washer to this, and then this will run from the inside out through this leg and the mount, and then you can back that up with one of the serrated flange lock nuts. Now once you have a couple of those started to hold it in place, go ahead and get all 12 of those mounting bolts started. Then you can go back, tighten the leg hardware to the frame, then center this slider front to rear, and tighten up all the bracket to slider bolt hardware. Now with your slider tight, you're just going to need to wire in those lights. Now I'm sure a lot of you are going to be running those as a rock light tied into a switch. However, since this vehicle is already equipped with a courtesy light in the factory step, we're just going to tie right back into that. So grab the harness that you pulled out of your step earlier. You don't have to be too precise on this, but you just want to leave yourself enough wire to work with. So I'm going to come down here about 8 inches from the connector that goes back to the vehicle. I'm going to cut that. Once that's cut, I'm just going to peel back a little bit of this wire loom. And you can cut that off as well. And that should leave you with enough wire to work with. Next, you're going to strip back a little bit of the casing on each of these wires. Now once you have it to this point, it's just going to be a matter of which connector you choose to use to tie this into the lights. I'm just going to hardwire this into the lights so that if the step ever has to come off, you'll just disconnect it here. The lights and this harness will all come with it. So since we're doing it that way, I'm just going to take each of these,
twist the wires up and crimp on a heat shrink style butt connector. Now back underneath the vehicle, you're going to take the wires that tie in to your lights. You can connect simply by twisting, for now, both red wires together. And then here on the factory harness, they made this pretty easy. Your red wire is also your power wire here. So you're just going to tie red to red using that butt connector. So then it's just going to be a matter of crimping those two wires into the other end of your connector. Check that connection, and then you'll take both black wires, twist those together as well, and tie them in with this white and black striped wire. After that, since we're using these heat shrink style connectors, I'm just going to shrink these down, and we'll tie this all up underneath here neatly and plug this back in to the factory harness. Then all you have left to do is check that those lights illuminate. Now, if you guys have any questions about this slider install or any other products here at Victory 4x4, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can email us, info@victory4x4.com, or give us a phone call, 269-459-8447.